I always thought the ugliest sounds in a house were the ones no one else could hear, like the way a picture frame complains in the quiet, or the whisper scratch of dust settling on shelves. But in our house, the ugliest sound was the pause after my mother said my brother's name. Zaid, she'd call out the word bright with expectation. And then there would be a hush, the kind of hush that asks everyone else to step aside. That pause was a velvet rope. It was the space carved out for him to shine, and for the rest of us to politely dim. Growing up, I learned to breathe inside that pause, to make room for it, to move my chair a little further back from the table, feel the edge of the rug against my toes, and pull my stories in tight where they couldn't be a bother. I didn't know how to call that feeling when I was 9 or 13 or 17. Now I call it training. My name is Amina Qureshi, and I am my family's oldest daughter. I'm the one who knows where the spare keys are, how to silence the squeak in the back gate, and which pot my mother actually means when she says the big one. I have always known those things. I've also always known that my brother Zaid is the hero of our family's picture. We come from a top-floor apartment in a brick building that smells like cardamom in the morning and rain-soaked stone at night. My father, Faisal, is a man who keeps his promises like talismans in his pockets. He says little does much and measures love in groceries and repairs. My mother, Samina, is 5 feet of devotion and control tied together with a silk scarf. She can dial guilt into a teaspoon and stir it into your cup like sugar. There's also my Aunt Noreen, who has an opinion shaped exactly like your weakest spot, and a knack for landing it there at precisely the wrong time. And then there's Zaid. He was named after a warrior, and maybe that was the first mistake. Or maybe the mistake was agreeing as a family to witness his life like a parade. When he started playing cricket, the apartment filled with white jerseys and green caps and my mother's laughter as she shouted at the television. When he started architecture, the dining table turned into a landscape of pencils and triangle rulers and papers so large they covered my dinner. When he started dating anyone, everyone in our building knew within the hour. Because my aunt has a voice that was engineered for announcing births and engagements and small little misunderstandings that will ruin your day if you let them. I loved him. I did. In the way that older sisters sometimes love their brothers fiercely and a bit helplessly. Like a doctor who knows the treatment won't be taken. I was there when he broke his wrist catching a ball he should have let go. I waited outside the principal's office when he got caught cheating on a math test he didn't need to pass. I was the one who showed him his first apartment on a map, who taught him how to fold a fitted sheet, who slipped a 20 into his wallet when he pretended he had enough. You'll make a great mother someday, my aunt would say when she saw me do those things. And I'd say, I'm not practicing. But my tone carried the wrong note. It sounded bitter. So I learned how to sound generous instead. I learned how to hide my tallying. It wasn't always uneven. There were years we ate mangoes on the roof and shared our secrets like twins. There were months when he'd sit on my bed and put an earbud in my ear and we'd trade playlists like a handshake. There were nights we laughed so hard my mother threatened to separate us. But those years dissolved quietly into a shape that kept shrinking around me. I went to university and came home with a degree my mother pronounced like a sneeze. Communications? While Zay dropped out and still got congratulated for finding himself. When our father had his heart scared 2 summers ago, it was me in the hospital chair with a paper cup of stale coffee. It was me arguing with the insurance agent in the corridor. Me rescheduling my clients. Me learning words like angioplasty and learning how to say them without trembling. Zaid visited after his studio hours if his head wasn't pounding. He took pictures from a flattering angle for Instagram and wrote, "Family is everything. Don't read too much into that." I told myself that night as I scrolled past it. It's my father's medical band still imprinting my wrist like a stamp. He's trying his best. Maybe I believed that even after the first time he blocked me. He did not block me spectacularly. I wish he had. I wish he had broken a plate or cursed me out or slammed a door so hard it cracked. Instead, he just disappeared from my phone like a window quietly sliding shut. We were in the middle of a normal sibling conversation about whose turn it was to pick up our mother's iron pills. And then his chat turned into a blank silhouette and a message that I could no longer send a reply. My stomach went cold. I hadn't even been angry in the conversation. I was tired and I said so. He didn't like my tone. I called him. He picked up on the fourth ring and said, "I need space," with the gravity of a man leaving for war. "For how long?" I asked. "Until you can talk to me without the attitude. So forever." I thought unfairly and hung up before the unfairness could turn my mouth into something uglier. He unblocked me a week later. No apology. Just a meme about biryani. I sent a laughing emoji. I didn't mention the knot that week had tied in my throat. And then, a few months ago, he told us about Hiba. We were at Sunday lunch, the time when my mother pulls out the good plates for no one. Because she says people don't come over anymore, but standards should never drop. The table smelled like saffron and my aunt's perfume and the cilantro my father chopped too loudly, as if the cutting could make him heard. "I want to tell you something," Zaid said, and the air held that rope-tied pause. He always begins the big ones that way. My mother put her hand over her heart in anticipation even before he said it. Aunt Noreen leaned forward so far her chain caught the light like lightning. "I met someone," he said. "Her name is Hiba. We're serious." "Serious?" My mother repeated, tasting the word like an expensive dessert. As in serious?" he said, smiling, and there was the boy I used to hold on to when a dog barked loud on our street. "Alhamdulillah," my father said softly, smiling with his eyes, because his mouth is stingy with praise. "Mashallah. Bring her," my mother instructed, clapping once. "Next Sunday." "No, this Wednesday." "No, today. Call her now." "I'll put more rice." "We need, ma'am," I said, gentle. She probably has her own plans. "Let's not bulldoze." My mother glared at me like I'd broken a glass. "Bulldoze," she repeated. "Since when is inviting people to your table bulldozing?" "She means well," Zaid said, reaching for my hand with a peacekeeper's reflex. "Don't fight." I let him touch my knuckles. Remembering suddenly the time he walked me to school in the rain and pretended his coat was an umbrella. And then he turned to me with the confidence of a man who assumed the home team was his and said, "I want you to be excited for me, Mina." "I am," I said truthfully. "I am. Tell me about her." "She's an interior designer," he said, puffing up a little, because that detail fit him like a matching cufflink. "We met at a client's house. She was sketching a staircase, and I noticed how her pencil moved, like she was conducting something only she could hear. We talked about cantilevers." "Romance," my aunt said, rolling her eyes. "The world spins on cantilevers." "Let me be happy," he teased. But his eyes flicked to my mother, not to me. I listened. I laughed in the right places. I asked questions. I texted him later that night a picture of a ring I imagined she might like simple, with a tiny emerald, because he'd once told me he loved the green-blue between sea and sky. Don't overstep, I warned myself. Deliberately choosing a ring from a store I knew he couldn't afford so it would live safely in the realm of fantasy. Just be his sister. Just be happy for him. He replied with a double heart. "Then you always get me." I saved that message like a small gold coin. The next afternoon, he blocked me again. I only noticed because I was going to send him a picture of the old clock in the hallway that had finally stopped. He was supposed to fix it for Mum. He'd promised. But the second my thumb hit send, the chat turned ghostly. I stared at the screen, walked to the kitchen where my mother was washing coriander, and said, "Did you fight with Zaid?" "Fight?" she repeated, genuinely surprised. "He just left Beta." He kissed my head. "Why?" "No reason," I said too quickly. "I think he's busy." I swallowed the panic. I told myself he was setting boundaries, that maybe Hiba was a private person and didn't want armchair architect advice from an older sister. Who doesn't know her beams from her columns? I told myself it had nothing to do with me. But that night I lay awake and counted scarce. Old grievances like beads on a broken thread. The time he didn't stand up for me when Aunt Noreen called my job fake work. The time he borrowed my car and returned it with an empty tank. The time he said, "Man, you're so intense," like it was a disease. A week later, he came to Friday dinner with Heba. She was, in a word, luminous. Not because she was stunning though she was, but because she looked at people like light looks at a surface carefully, acknowledging angles. She smiled easily. She thanked my father for the tea like it was a favor, not a habit. She helped my mother in the kitchen without insisting, and later, when we were alone for a minute in the hallway, she touched the hallway clock and said, "I like that it doesn't tick right now. The silence feels restful." I liked her immediately. I liked the way her eyes softened when she looked at Zaid. I liked the way she asked me questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. I liked that she noticed the chipped paint on the living room window and said, "It looks like lace," and I believed her. I liked her so much, in fact, that even as my mother performed her usual dance insisting on seconds, storytelling for applause, scolding me for not bringing out the good napkins, I felt a kind of ease settle into my bones. Maybe this will be okay, I told myself. Maybe she will love him and he will love her and I will stop keeping score. After they left, my mother did her own inventory. Pretty, she ruled. Educated. A good family. She turned to my father as if he kept files. My father shrugged. But her hair's so simple. These girls now, everything is simple. At least wear earrings when you meet elders. She turned to me. "What do you think, Amina?" "I like her," I said, knowing all answers were wrong. "She seems kind." "Kind, okay?" My aunt sniffed, pretending she wasn't actually smiling. "But can she make a Lou gosht? Can she handle him? You know how our Zaid is sensitive." Sensitive. That was the floating word we held over any mess he made to keep from calling it what it was. Sensitive like a high-quality violin. Like a premium fabric that needs special care. "Everyone can learn to cook," I said. "Not everyone can manage a man," Aunt Noreen said. And laughter ricocheted around the kitchen, though my father's eyes didn't join in. If I'm honest, what happened next was not a blow. It felt more like a sting, the kind that makes your eyes water because of what it implies, not because it really hurts. I texted Zaid under our group chat, me, Mom, Dad, him to say I'd be happy to help with any pre-wedding errands, to offer my spreadsheet brain and my good taste in venues and my friend Rania's cousin who did dresses that looked like clouds. I wrote that I wanted his day to be beautiful and that I knew how to stay in the background. I put a smiley face to soften it. The message delivered in the group. He liked it with a heart. Then he didn't text me privately for 3 weeks. 3 weeks in which I saw my mother, pinning inspiration on her corkboard, and felt my father's wallet thin around the edges and read my aunt's. Breathless updates about henna, artists, and photography. Bundles and the number of parathas required to keep a guest from muttering. 3 weeks in which I kept being quiet. I attended fittings I wasn't invited to. I stood outside florists while Heba and my mother argued about orchids versus marigolds. I carried shoes and safety pins and a bottle of water I was certain someone would need in 13 minutes. I was not a martyr about it. I told myself it was love. "Zaid says you're the calm one," Heba whispered to me once in the elevator, smiling, her bangles talking softly. "Did he?" I asked, surprised into warmth. "He hasn't said much to me." "Planning is like diving," she said, not noticing the stiffness in my reply, or kindly pretending not to. "You hold your breath and go down together, then come up for air and remember why you're doing it." She looked suddenly shy. "I know he's lucky to have you. I'm lucky too." I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her that my brother is a brilliant, complicated, high-maintenance storm of a person. I wanted to tell her that on the deepest level, he is soft like a bruised pear. And that to love him is to keep bandages in the glove compartment of every car you ever drive. I didn't tell her any of that. I said, "You picked a good man," and meant it. I did mean it. He was good even when he wasn't. The first sign that I was expected to be invisible was the seating chart. Heba sent me a photo of a mock-up at midnight, apologizing for the late hour. "Do you think it flows?" she asked. It was beautiful larches of names, a garden of calligraphy. I scrolled through, smiling at our cousins clustered together. At the placement of Uncle Arif, the gossip far from the microphone, at my mother and father firmly in the front. Then I scrolled again. And again. Haha, I typed, not trusting the sudden rush of heat to my head. Where am I? She sent a line of question marks. Then, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me fix this. Zaid took your name off because she stopped typing. Started again. Because he said you'd probably be at the vendor table helping and would float. Float. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out a cupful with their hand. I looked at my lock screen at the picture of me and Zaid from years ago in front of the bad mural on Goldberg Street. Our faces slick with summer. He had drawn a mustache on the sun. He didn't say that to me. I typed. But okay, whatever you need. I'm putting you front row next to your parents, Heba wrote. Done. I stared at her text for a long moment. Then I wrote, thank you, and tucked the hurt into the box where I kept reserving space for the bigger one I was afraid was coming, though I couldn't name it yet. The second sign came at the engagement dinner, which was less a dinner and more a marathon. 20 tables. 37 versions of congratulations, and the same 5 questions asked like a beautiful ritual. My mother radiated. My father wore a new watch I had picked and paid for and pretended fell from the sky. Zaid was magnetic, collecting eyes. When it was time for speeches, he stood up with the microphone, looked right at me and said, "My family is my foundation." There was applause. He told a story about how, when we were kids, we built forts out of sofa cushions, and I always made the roof sturdy. "She's the practical one," he said, and turned to Heba, "and you're the dreamer. Between the two of you, I'm covered." The words were lovely. The way he didn't ask me to speak after was less so. By the time we were a month out from the wedding, I'd settled into a role that felt like a comfortable lie. The woman who was everywhere and nowhere at once. I was in every WhatsApp group, yet no one tagged me for a direct answer. I was in every room, but never at the mirror. I carried pins in my hair and scissors in my purse and anticides in my pocket. When people asked what I was wearing, I said something nice, inshallah, and changed the subject to napkin folds. In private, I watched videos of women tearing up as they walked with their brothers into receptions. And I had to turn the sound off. I wanted to want that. I wanted to walk with him. But I had the creeping sense that if I did, someone would later say I had taken up too much space. Meanwhile, my aunt conducted a quiet campaign. "You mustn't look too flashy," she told me over tea, her nails clicking against the glass. "It's not your day." "I know," I said. "Don't be too understated either," she amended, as if she'd heard the sarcasm I hadn't used. "People will talk." "People will talk," I echoed, and smiled without teeth. She leaned in with the huge kindness of someone about to hurt you. "And when the wedding planners come around to collect the immediate family for photos, you should hang back. Be gracious." "The immediate family," I repeated, my voice doing that strange thing where it sounds like a stranger's voice at the end of a long corridor. "You know what I mean?" she said, waving her hand. "The parents, the bride and groom. You can join later." I looked at my mother, who was carefully smoothing out the tablecloth like she could iron the creases out of fate. She didn't look up. "Okay," I said. And then, because apparently I still needed to be hit, the third sign came like a soft slap from a hand I trusted. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk trying to edit a brand guide for a client who wanted their logo to look more sincere, whatever that meant. When a message popped onto my screen from an unknown number. "Hi, Amina. This is Heba. Can we chat later tonight? Need a quick favor, your mom's sorry shop contact." I smiled. A favor I could do. A message asking me by name. I typed back, "Of course." But before I could hit send, another message buzzed in from an unrecognized Gmail address. A calendar invite that took up my whole screen. The subject was final venue walkthrough, Qureshi Alvi wedding. The details had Hiba's name and Zaid's and a date stamped 3 weeks from now. The location was Ivory Crescent Hall, a place I'd only ever seen in other people's photographs. And the guest list my breath caught was set to private. There was a note at the bottom. Attendees: Samina Qureshi, Fazol Qureshi, Noreen Paracha, Billo Paracha, Heba Alvi, Safa Alvi, Shabana Alvi, Asad Alvi, Zaid Qureshi. Vendors, decor, photography, catering. Me, not there. I stared at the invite, feeling like a person who has been jogging alongside a car only to realize the car doesn't intend to stop. My phone rang. Beta, can you pick up Nan? My mother asked cheerfully. The good kind. Of course, I said automatically. Mum, did you get an invite to a venue walkthrough? She paused for a half-breath. Maybe Heba is. She is very organized. And me. Oh, she said, making the sound she makes when she can't find a spoon and blames the cabinet. It's only for parents, I think. Aunt Noreen is going, I said, staring at the list as if I could rearrange it with my glare. She is. Senior, my mother offered weakly. Don't be dramatic, Amina, right? I said, my heart beating against my ribs like a neighbor's fist. Not dramatic. After we hung up, I let my hands fall into my lap and pressed my nails into my palms just enough to feel it. You are not the girl who cries over a Google invite, I admonished myself. You are the girl who shows up when it matters. I closed my laptop. I went out and bought the Nan, the good kind, and a small tart for myself that I ate in the car before I went upstairs, so my mother wouldn't ask me to cut it into 6 pieces. I put the Nan on the counter and kissed her cheek and listened to her discuss marigold prices like the weather. I told myself, it's fine. It's not the wedding. It's just a walkthrough. That night, I stared at my bedroom ceiling and listened to the building breathe. The light from the street pooled at my window like a tired dog. My brother's name sat in my throat like a stone. I imagined a version of the future in which I did not go at all to the walkthrough, to the wedding, to any of it. I imagined how relieved everyone would be to not have to negotiate my presence. I imagined how I'd be called dramatic and then silently, perhaps missed. At 2:12 a.m., my phone flashed once on the nightstand. I expected a message from a client in a different time zone. It was Zaid. Hey, he wrote. Are you awake? I stared. I waited. Another dot blinked, then went away. Then Heba is stressed. Don't make it about you. Just be cool. I sat up, heartbeat in my ears. I typed, what? He didn't answer. The dots came back, faded. Came back again. Then he wrote, night, and the chat went quiet. I didn't cry. Not then. I lay down and watched the ceiling until the sun pushed a pale hand into the room and showed me that nothing had shifted but my understanding. In the morning, Heba sent a voice note, breathless, apologetic. Amina, I am so sorry. I didn't realize Zaid had removed you from the vendors group and also the walkthrough invites. He said don't be mad that you'd be happier if you weren't dragged into all the little things. He said you have big projects at work. I told him that's not his call to make. I'm adding you back now. Okay? Are you mad? Don't be mad at me. I love you. I listened to it twice, pressing the phone into my ear like pressure could make meaning change. I texted back, I'm not mad at you. Then I added, because I am me. Do you want tea after work? I'll bring you ginger biscuits. She said she did. I took that small mercy and put it in my pocket. By the end of that day, I thought I knew the shape of this slide I was up against. Small exclusions, convenient silences, a steady background hum of, don't make it about you. It was survivable. It was something I could, with effort and a well-trained smile, endure. And then the phone call came. It was a Thursday when the air felt sharpened by the coming rain. I had just finished a client call and was reaching for a glass of water when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. It had the crisp, official look of numbers that belong to institutions in trouble. Hello, I said, already bracing. Hi, is this Amina Qureshi? A cheerful voice chirped. In the background, I heard the echo sound of a large room and someone testing a microphone. 1, 2. 1, 2 like tap shoes on wood. Yes, I said cautiously. Wonderful. This is Farah calling from Ivory Crescent Hall. We're finalizing the guest confirmations for the Qureshi Alvi wedding on the 14th. And your number is listed as the primary contact for the family side. I just needed to confirm your attendance and dietary preferences, and also run past you a small note about. Oh, she paused, papers rustling. About the change to the ceremony order. For a heartbeat, every sound around me dropped out the elevator in the hallway, the kettle clicking in the kitchen, my own blood in my ears. My number is listed as, I repeated stupidly, staring at my reflection in the dark part of my monitor. My face looked like a story I hadn't finished reading. Yes, Farah said brightly. You're down as the point person for the Qureshi family. We also have an alternate. She read out my mother's number. But you're the primary. Congratulations to your brother. The word blocked didn't enter my mind then. It landed, heavy, definitive, the quiet kind that makes the air itself step back. I forced my voice into a shape that sounded like someone who had expected this. Of course, I said. Yes, I'm attending. I said my dietary preferences like a password. I said I would notify the elder relatives to be seated early. I said I would make sure the photographer had the correct list. I said all these things in a steady, courteous, professional tone, while something inside me stood up very slowly. Like a person realizing they are in a room with a locked door and a lit match. Great, Farah chirped. We also wanted to check the spelling on your name for the family seating card. I'm Amina, right? Yes, I said. Perfect. Oh, and one more thing, she added, lowering her voice conspiratorially in that service industry way that makes you feel included. We got a note from the groom's aide that there's been a small guest list adjustment. It says here, please remove Amina from the bridal house access list for the morning of prep. She'll join later in the day. I just sense you're the primary contact. I wanted to make sure that's correct before we update our security staff. I closed my eyes, blocked the word, now head company, removed. Understood, I said, and my calm voice, it's the one I learned in the pause after my mother said my brother's name, spoke for me. Please leave it as it is for now. When I hung up, the room came back into focus, like a tide reversing. It brought with it the smell of dust and sunlight and the sound of my own breath. He had blocked me from his wedding in every way he thought mattered. But the venue had called me first. The day of the engagement party had felt like a dress rehearsal for something bigger, something grander. But the week of the Mendi, the pre-wedding event everyone had been buzzing about, was when I began to feel the ground beneath me shift like sand. My mother was a blur of green and gold, pacing between rooms with bangles that jingled like tiny alarm bells. Amina, the dupatta pins. She barked one morning, even before I'd had my tea. Where are the dupatta pins? Don't tell me you misplaced them. I put them in the vanity drawer, I replied, my voice steady, though inside I wanted to scream. I am not your warehouse manager. I am your daughter. Aha! Yes, good girl, she said, dismissing me with a flick of her hand as though I were some helpful maid. That was my role these days, helpful, efficient, invisible. Zaid, meanwhile, floated around like a groom in training. The family fussed over him, pinning flowers to his Sherwani collar, laughing at his lazy jokes, coaxing him to dance when he hardly knew the steps. Zaid Beta, Aunt Noreen gushed, you were born for this. Look at you, a prince. And Amina, I teased bitterly. What was I born for? She didn't even laugh. She just said to support your brother Beta. To keep things smooth, you're the practical one. There it was, again practical. Not radiant. Not adored. Not chosen. Practical. When the Mendi night finally arrived, I wore a yellow suit with delicate silver threadwork. I had saved 4 weeks to buy it, not because I wanted to outshine the bride, but because I wanted to feel like I existed in my own skin for once. As we arrived at the banquet hall, the music was already pounding, dull beats and laughter, colors exploding everywhere like fireworks. Cousins posed for selfies in clusters, their henna-stained palms outstretched like art. I had barely stepped through the door when I felt the first sting. Amina Beta, one of my mother's friends, said sweetly, grabbing my arm, you're not sitting with the family? The chart has your name at the side tables. The side tables, I repeated, blinking. She pointed at the seating chart taped elegantly to the entrance board. My eyes scanned quickly, heart thumping. Parents, front row. Bride siblings, reserved. Groom siblings, except there was only one name, Zaid, me. I was wedged among distant cousins I barely recognized, the overflow section, like an afterthought. Heat flushed up my neck. Surely this was a mistake. Surely Heba or the venue planner or someone had forgotten. I turned to my mother. "Ma'am, my name isn't listed with you." She frowned only slightly, smoothing her dupatta. "It's fine, Beta. Don't make a scene. You'll still see everything." "See everything?" I hissed. "I'm his sister." "Exactly," she snapped in a low voice. "So behave like one. Be supportive." And that was it. The verdict. I sat where I was told. My cousins, loud, glittering, oblivious, giggled and shouted over me. Every so often one would say, "Oh, Amina, can you take our picture?" handing me their phone like I was the hired photographer. And I did. I took their pictures. I angled the lights. I smiled through my teeth. On stage, Zayd and Heba sat like royalty, flower garlands draped over their shoulders. When the time came for the family dances, I braced myself. Surely, here I would be called. The MC announced, "Now, the groom's family." Cheers erupted. My mother and father were ushered forward. My aunt, my uncle, even to distant male cousins I hadn't seen in years. All of them were herded up to the stage. But me. "Amina, move aside," someone whispered, pushing me back as the dance group made its way through. "Wait, what about me?" I asked the organizer, my voice breaking. "Oh," she said casually, glancing at her clipboard. "Your brother said you'd probably be helping with the logistics. Do you want to just keep the crowd clear from this area?" My heart stopped. Helping with logistics. That's what I had been reduced to. Not a sister. Not a daughter. Not family. Logistics. The music roared. The doll players pounded. My brother danced, laughing, spinning with my cousins, sweat flying from his forehead like joy itself. And I stood in the corner, holding a guest's handbag because she asked me to, my face burning, my throat aching. I wanted to disappear, but Wersai wanted them to see me, to see what they were doing. At the end of the night, when the photographers lined up the family portrait, I stepped forward instinctively, smoothing my dupatta, preparing to stand where I belonged. But Zayd stopped me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold. He just put his hand lightly on my shoulder and said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "Not this one, Mina. Just parents and close family." Close family. The photographers didn't argue. They simply adjusted their lens. The others leaned in closer. And I froze. The hall blurred around me. The laughter became static. The scent of marigolds turned sharp and nauseating. I stepped back. My dupatta snagged on a chair, and I didn't even care. My hands trembled as I unclipped it, each movement echoing in my skull like a bell. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. By the time the night ended, everyone was laughing, hugging, exchanging favors. And I was walking to the parking lot alone, my heels clicking against the concrete like accusations. I sat in the back seat of my car and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My lipstick was cracked. My eyeliner smudged. I didn't look like a sister who had just attended her brother's Mendy. I looked like a stranger who had wandered into the wrong life. He erased me. I thought numbly. He erased me from his wedding. And the cruelest part, everyone else helped him do it. That was the night the audience inside me, the one that always cheered for Zayd, excused him, defended him, finally fell silent. Because humiliation has a way of transforming grief into something sharper. And I knew then this story wasn't over. Humiliation leaves a bruise, but betrayal cuts deeper. And sometimes the cut comes not from an enemy's knife, but from your own blood. After the Mendy debacle, I tried to retreat into silence. I told myself, just endure. Just show up. Don't let them say you ruined anything. I stayed out of group chats. I stopped offering to help. I focused on my freelance clients, filling my days with color palettes and copywriting deadlines. Yet everywhere I turned, wedding chatter leaked through the cracks. My mother bargaining for floral garlands over speakerphone. My aunt gossiping about Heba's relatives. My father withdrawing wads of cash at the bank for emergencies, and Zaid. He floated through it all untouched, calling himself stressed when people begged him to make a decision, grinning at his phone whenever Heba texted. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But something inside me had cracked that night at the Mendy, and the fracture lines were spreading. 2 days before the wedding, my phone rang again. The same cheerful coordinator from Ivory Crescent Hall. Hi, Amina. Just confirming once more you'll be the point of contact for the groom's side on Saturday, correct? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Point of contact? I repeated. Yes, she said brightly. Your name is listed as the primary. So if there are any emergencies, timing delays, missing decor, catering, hiccups, we'll call you first. I sat there in stunned silence. Me. The same sister he'd shoved into the corner. The same sister he'd told wasn't close family. Could you also confirm, the woman continued? If you'll be bringing the groom's sherwani and turban to the hall in the morning. It says here you're responsible. My jaw slackened. Excuse me, yes? We have you down as handling the wardrobe delivery. It says Amena reliable. That's what the groom wrote. My chest tightened. Reliable logistics. Invisible. Yes, I managed finally. I'll handle it. When the call ended, I sat frozen for a long time, my phone heavy in my lap. So this was his game. Cut me out of the moments that mattered, but keep me on the hook for the work. Hide me from the spotlight, but lean on me behind the scenes. A ghost sister. A backstage servant, and yet he had written my name. Reliable. That word stung like salt on an open wound. Because it meant he knew. He knew I'd still come through. He knew I'd swallow my pride. He knew I'd bend. But this time, something inside me whispered, maybe you don't have to. That evening, there was a knock on my bedroom door. It was Heba. She slipped inside like a guilty secret, her dupatta sliding off one shoulder. Amina, she said softly, can I talk to you? Of course. She sat on the edge of my bed, twisting her bangles nervously. I don't know how to say this, but Zaid isn't himself right now. He's so wound up. Every time I bring you up, he tenses. My throat ached. He told you things about me. No, she rushed to say. Not bad things, just... He says you make him feel judged. He says you see all his flaws. I let out a hollow laugh. Maybe because I've spent my life cleaning up after them. Her eyes flickered with sympathy. I know. I see it. And honestly, I love you for it. You're the only one keeping this circus from falling apart. But she swallowed. I also think he's scared of you. Scared? I repeated incredulously. Yes, because you know him too well. You see through the charming act. And he doesn't like feeling small. For a moment, the room felt too tight, like the walls themselves were listening. I wanted to scream, then why am I the one being punished? Instead, I whispered, so what do you want me to do, Heba? Keep shrinking. Keep disappearing. Her eyes shimmered with tears. I just want peace, Amina. I want us to be a family. Please, for me, can you just step back a little longer? After the wedding, things will calm down. He'll come around. Step back, disappear. Again, I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. But inside, the whisper that had started earlier grew louder. Maybe it's time to stop being reliable. Maybe it's time to stop bending. That night, unable to sleep, I went to the kitchen for water. On the way back, I overheard voices drifting from my parents' room. She'll make a scene, Zaid's voice said, low but firm. No, she won't, my mother replied. Amina knows her place. My heart clenched. She better, he said sharply, because if she embarrasses me in front of Hibis's family, I swear I'll cut her off for good. She won't even get an invitation to anniversaries. My mother sighed. She won't. She's practical. Practical. That word again. My curse. My cage. I pressed my back to the hallway wall, nails digging into my palms. My own family, my brother, my mother plotting my erasure like it was a strategy meeting. And in that moment, something inside me broke cleanly. This wasn't about logistics or being reliable. or even about peace. This was about power. The next morning, I opened my email to find a message from the venue coordinator. She had mistakenly CC'd me on an internal vendor thread. Attached was the master's schedule for the wedding day. And there, in bold letters, under ceremony access, primary family contact, Amina Qureshi. My name, not erased, not excluded, not invisible. Right there in black and white. Zaid might have blocked me on WhatsApp. He might have shoved me aside at the Mendy. He might have whispered about cutting me out. But to the venue, to the caterers, to the florists, to every professional hired for his big day, I was the one they trusted. I was the backbone. He had tried to erase me, but in his own handwriting, in his own planning notes, he had written me back in. Reliable, essential, indispensable. That was the twist. And in that moment, I realized he could humiliate me in front of family. But the wedding itself, the carefully curated event he'd staked his pride on, was still balanced on me. And if I chose to, I could tilt it. That realization burned through me like fire. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Because now I held the one thing Zaid never imagined I'd have. Leverage. The morning of the wedding, the apartment was chaos. Saris flying across beds, my aunt barking orders, my mother snapping at anyone who dared move too slowly. Zaid was locked in his room, music blasting, as if he were the star of some private film. And me. I sat quietly in the corner, holding the garment bag that contained his sherwani and turban, the ones the venue coordinator had reminded me about. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked how I felt. They just handed me things, safety pins, payment envelopes, jewelry boxes. Because of course I was reliable. But my mind was racing. I knew something now that they didn't. I knew that when the wedding staff looked for direction, I wouldn't look at Zaid or my mother or my aunt. They'd look at me. And in that knowledge, I felt a dangerous calm. Ivory Crescent Hall gleamed like a palace, chandelier spilling golden light across polished floors. Guests flooded in, women in sequins, men in crisp, sherwanis, children running like bright little sparks. The coordinator spotted me immediately. Amina. She beamed, clipboard in hand. Thank God you're here. The catering team is waiting on final numbers. Also, the photographer needs approval for stage setup. My mother swooped in, bristling. Excuse me? Why are you asking her? The coordinator blinked, confused. She's the primary contact. The look on my mother's face, confusion twisting into irritation, irritation hardening into denial, was almost enough to make me laugh. Almost. Instead, I smiled politely and said, I'll handle it. And just like that, the staff deferred to me. My mother stood frozen, unable to undo what had already been written into contracts and checklists weeks ago. For the first time in years, I wasn't in the shadows. I wasn't invisible. I was in charge. Things went smoothly until the procession lineup. Guests were buzzing, music pounding, the groom's side preparing to make their grand entrance. That's when one of the ushers ran up to me, panicked. Amina. The garlands for the bride and groom, they're missing. I froze. Those garlands weren't optional. They were essential. Without them, the ceremony couldn't proceed. Check the vendor truck, I ordered. We did. They're not there. The driver says someone signed them off already. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't a mistake. This was sabotage. And I didn't need to guess who had orchestrated it. Because a moment later, Zaid himself stormed out from the dressing room, face flushed. Where are the garlands? He shouted at me as if I were the thief. I met his eyes.com. You tell me. You're the groom, aren't you? His jaw clenched. Don't play games, Amina. If this ruins the schedule, if it ruins the schedule, I cut in. Lowering my voice so only he could hear, then maybe you shouldn't have erased the one person holding it together. He blinked, thrown off. And that was when the coordinator rushed over, breathless. Amina, the florist, just called. Apparently the garlands were redirected to another hall by mistake. They can fix it, but it'll take an hour. An hour. On wedding time, that was catastrophic. All eyes turned to me. Guests shifting, whispers spreading, high-buzz relatives glancing nervously. Zaid hissed, fix it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to obey. I could feel it, the moment stretching, the silence thickening, everyone waiting for me to either save the day or fail completely. So I made a choice. I stepped up onto the stage, took the microphone from the MC, whose eyebrows shot up in surprise. My heart pounded, but my voice came out clear, steady. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, smiling at the sea of confused faces. There's been a slight delay with the ceremonial garlands. While we wait, I thought I'd share a few words about family. The hall hushed. Even Zaid froze. My brother, I continued, glancing at him, is a man who shines. He's always been the star, the one we all cheered for, the one our parents lifted high. And I've always been the background, the support, the practical one. Reliable, invisible. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My mother's face went white. But here's the thing about being invisible, I said, my voice gaining strength. You see everything. You remember everything. And you learn exactly how much weight you carry, even when no one admits it. I looked directly at Zaid then, my words slicing through the air. This wedding, these arrangements, this so-called perfect day, it's standing on my shoulders. Every pin, every schedule, every payment envelope, every last detail. And yet I was told I'm not close family. The room erupted in murmurs. Zaid opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. No, don't interrupt. Not this time. For once, I get to speak. My throat tightened, but I pushed on. All I ever wanted was to stand beside my brother, proud. To celebrate him, to welcome Hiba, to be part of this moment. But instead, I was pushed aside, erased, used for labor, denied love. I let the words hang heavy and undeniable. Today, I won't be invisible anymore. If I'm reliable enough to carry this wedding, then I'm visible enough to belong in it. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly a sound broke it, clapping. It started with one of Hiba's uncles, then another, until the entire bride's side was applauding. Guests nodded, whispering, some even cheering softly. Hiba herself stood up, tears in her eyes, and walked to the stage. She took my hand. You belong, she said firmly into the microphone. Always. Zaid's face crumpled, rage and humiliation warring across his features. He tried to speak, but the tide had already turned. The bride's family had seen the truth. The guests had seen it. There was no undoing it. My mother buried her face in her dupatta, shame radiating off her. My aunt looked like she'd swallowed her tongue, and Zaid. For once the star of the family had no spotlight left. Because I had taken it. The garlands eventually arrived and the ceremony went on, but nothing was the same. Every photo, every ritual, every whispered blessing carried the weight of what had been revealed. I was no longer the invisible sister. I was the sister who had spoken, who had forced the truth into the open. And Zaid, for all his attempts to erase me, was the one left exposed. Revenge is rarely clean. It isn't a perfect line drawn between hurt and justice. It's messy, jagged, sharp at the edges. And after the wedding, I found myself standing in the debris of my own truth. When the final prayers were said and the music swelled again, guests carried on with the usual rituals, eating, laughing, posing for photographs. But the air had changed. Everywhere I went, people touched my arm and whispered, "You were so brave. You spoke what everyone was thinking. Good for you, Beta." Families need people who tell the truth. And yet, beneath their praise, I could feel the burn of disapproval from my own side. My mother avoided my eyes, her lips pressed tight as if holding back a storm. My aunt hissed into my ear, "How dare you embarrass us like that?" But then Hiba's mother came to me. She clasped my hands warmly and said, "You reminded us what weddings are supposed to mean. Unity, honesty. I'm grateful." Her words wrapped around me like balm. For once, someone had seen not just what I did, but why I did it. Across the hall, Zaid glared at me with eyes full of betrayal. In his mind, I had ruined his perfect day. But in mine, I had only reclaimed my right to exist within it. The morning after, silence hung heavy in our apartment. My mother banged pots louder than necessary. My aunt muttered prayers under her breath. My father sat with his tea, staring into it like it held answers. Finally, Zaid stormed into the living room, his voice sharp as glass. "Why did you do it, Amina? Why couldn't you just let me have my moment?" I looked at him, my heart steady. "Because you tried to erase me from it. You made me look weak in front of everyone." He snapped. "No, Zaid," I said quietly. "You made yourself look weak. By cutting me out. By treating me like a servant, not a sister. All I did was tell the truth." His face twisted, torn between guilt and anger. "You'll never understand the pressure I'm under. And you'll never understand what it feels like," I shot back. "To give everything for someone who refuses to even call you family." The room fell silent. My mother's eyes shone with tears she wouldn't let fall. My father finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "She's right." We all turned. My father set his cup down. "Amina has carried this family more times than we admit. And Zaid, you have taken that for granted. Yesterday was not her shame. It was ours." For a moment, Zaid looked like a little boy again, caught, chastened, vulnerable. But pride is a cruel master. He turned and walked out without another word. In the weeks that followed, I kept my distance. Zaid and Heba moved into their new apartment, and though Heba called me often, Zaid rarely spoke. When he did, his words were clipped, formal. But I didn't chase him this time. For the first time in my life, I let him sit with the silence. Instead, I poured myself into my own work, my own friendships. I said yes to opportunities I used to turn down out of guilt or obligation. I traveled for a client project. I went to dinner with friends without worrying about who needed me at home. And slowly I felt myself stretch into the space I had always denied myself. 3 months later, on a rainy Sunday, there was a knock at my door. It was Zaid. He looked smaller somehow, water dripping from his hair, his usual confidence dimmed. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat at my kitchen table, silence stretching between us like a test. Finally he said, "I'm sorry." I froze. He swallowed hard. "I was scared, Mina. Scared you'd overshadow me. Scared you'd remind people I'm not as perfect as they think. And I thought, if I pushed you out, maybe I could control it." My throat tightened. "You didn't just push me out. You broke me. I know." His voice cracked. "And I hate myself for it. But when you spoke that day, it made me realize something. I don't shine without you. I never did." Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back. "Then don't ever try to erase me again." He nodded. Never. For the first time in a long while, I believed him. Looking back now, I understand that families are like mirrors. They show you the best of yourself, but also the ugliest parts. My brother's wedding showed me both. I learned that silence protects no one. That shrinking yourself only teaches others to ignore you. And that sometimes justice doesn't come in whispers or in private, it comes in standing on a stage, trembling but unbroken, and telling the truth out loud. I am still the practical one. I am still reliable. But I am no longer invisible. And if anyone ever tries to block me from my own family again, well, they'll remember what happened the last time, and that was my story. A story of betrayal, humiliation, and finally, justice. If you felt my pain, my anger, or my victory, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story like this. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you're still hungry for more drama, betrayal, and revenge, don't stop now. Click here for the next story waiting just for you.